All right. Hey, Michael. Good to see you.
All right. Good to see you, David.
Yeah, welcome everybody. We're here back for the third episode with of this Clawhammer workshop series with Michael Miles. Today we're going to be covering blues and blues improvisation, and let's dive in. Michael, so what tuning? You played a little ditty right there. What tuning are you in?
Well, I'm in what I call a D7 blues tuning, a D7 suspended chord, and it's very close to G modal. Really, it's so it's like G tuning with a second string tuned up to C, but I've got so there's the fourth string is D, third string is G, second is C, first string is D. And then the fifth string is up to A. So I've got that underneath a railroad spike. So all across that's the tuning. Now, it's not used very much in the banjo world for playing in the key of D, but the spelling of this tuning is exactly a D7 suspended chord. So we've got the D is the root, A is the third string, G is the one that gives it the suspension. What gives it kind of its power is the second string tuned up to C, because C in the key of D is a flat 7. And then the first string is D, the fifth string is A, that's the fifth of the chord. So then when you strum it open, it's kind of this ethereal sound, but all I need to do is cover the second string, cover the third string, and it becomes a D7 chord. And what's powerful about it is that it's especially for playing alone, is that you've got a low, we're in the key of D, you got D in the bass. So your lowest note is D. And it sets up, so then as we proceed through the chord progression, we'll get to the 1-4-5 chords in the 12-bar blues. But also about this is that one of the things that I've observed when I was running the Old Town School of Folk Music was banjo players would tend to run away from the key of E. And guitar players, all your guitar player friends, most of them, what they want to do is they want to play blues in the key of E. And what I was observing was the banjo player's response was, "Hey man, I just don't play in E." and it's like, well, what world is this that it's okay to not play in the key of E? So not only does this tuning allow you to and I'll show you how it works in the key of D, but you just throw a capo on the second fret, and you raise the fifth string from the up to the ninth fret using the railroad spike, and you're in the key of E, and you can be playing blues with 5 guitar players, and your banjo notes are going to sing out over all of them because we have that registers.
So real fast, you said. If you just fret the G string, you have a D7 chord. So you're fretting at the 7th fret there?
Well, what's kind of interesting about it is that we have a number of if the third string is open, it's G suspended. If I go to the 2nd fret, then it's an A note. That's a D chord. It's a D7 chord right there. Just with the 2nd fret, I can go up to the 5th fret. That doubles the 2nd string. That's a C note. We're still D7. You can go up to the 7th fret. That's a D note. It's a D7. You can go up to the 10th fret, and that's an F note that gives it that's in the blues scale. It kind of gives it a funky sound, and then and so what you have the choice for is there's all these D's, one finger D's all up and down the neck. Just one finger doing all that. So when it comes to when we need to go back to D, there's choices.
And they kind of, because all those chords don't have a third in it, so they kind of still has an open sort of sound. It's a kind of a modal sound in that it's not major or minor in a certain way.
Exactly. And the issue with playing, like when we get into the blues scale uses not the third of the chord, but the flat third of the chord. So when we play a blues scale, the first note is D and the second note is F natural, not F sharp. And so if there's F sharp and it sounds, that's the note that sounds cheerful. and blues is often times harmonically there's like this flirtation between the flat third and the major third. So between F and F sharp in the key of D, the sound of that's a critical part of playing blues is managing that and using it to your advantage.
Yeah. So let's see. So would you play full chord shapes in this tuning, or are you kind of just doing a kind of a one finger sort of chordal shape?
We it's yes to all of the above. And so what's fun about it is that because of just like when you're playing in regular old G tuning on the banjo, you can always fall back on those open strings. And so here, when we're in the key of D, you can fall back on the open strings. This is all we've got D covered. So then the issue is how to manage G and A, the 4 and the 5 chords in the key. So that we've got and when we're playing around with different different voicings of those chords and different locations of them to make it interesting and to have some variations.
Okay.
So I can show you, what I'm going to suggest that we do is to play. I'll show you the blues scale, and then when we're going through the chord progression, and I have a chart here that you can get with this as a supplement to this workshop. It just lays out the blues chord progression, and there's a few variations on it. I'm going to start out by playing 4 measures of D. Then it goes to, and what's great about blues, it just repeats. So then we go to 2 measures of G, 2 more measures of D, and then the third line is 1 measure of A, 1 measure of G, 1 measure of D, 1 measure of A. So, and what I'll do is when we're on the D chord, I'm gonna improvise on the blues scale, and when we're on those other chords, G and A, I'm going to show you a couple of variations that were locations for how to play cool sounding versions of G and A in this tuning. And what makes improvisation, I think, compelling is when the player, the improviser, is aware of the chord progression, so that you'll hear when the chord changes happen. It's just not, you can play a pentatonic scale and noodle around and it always sounds good, but it doesn't always sound compelling. This is going to sound hopefully compelling. And let me just play it through a time so you can hear what I'm starting to talk about. And so here's the blues scale. There's a couple different places to play it. There's this play, and there's a diagram that goes with this. Here's down in the lowest register, open 4th string, the 3rd fret on the 4th string, then up over to the 3rd string, open 1st and then 2nd fret, and then the 2nd string, open 2. So there's the blues scale. And what's great about the banjo being friendly like this, we'll just jump up and play that an octave higher at the 12th fret, and it's 12 on the 4th string, 15, and then 12, 13, 14 on the 3rd string, and then 12 and 14 on the 2nd string. So we get, and we've got this down here, and this up here. And then there's, once you've got that in your ear, you can find other locations for it. And then, you know, there's where the sounds are. So when I'm playing the scale, that's what I'll be doing. And so that would just sound like, here's 4 measures of D, messing around with that scale. And so there's, and I'm just kind of making this up on the spot, but I know where those sounds are. So then when it goes to the G chord, there's and the A chord, there's 2 different shapes that I want to share with you. Here's the G. If it's a little kind of a triangle chord, so my the G in the bass here. 5th fret on the 4th string, 4th fret on the 3rd string, 5th fret on the 2nd string. We've got that triangle.
Get that if you're coming from the G tuning as a G chord, but just moving that 3rd string up 2 frets, right?
Well, it's actually the same because we're tuned to just like it's G tuning. So here's that chord, the 5th fret of the 4th string, 4th fret of the 3rd string. That's just right out of G tuning.
Yeah.
But the note that we're adding is F.
Gotcha.
on the 5th fret of the 2nd string. So,
right.
And it's that little triangle shape, and then you can take and play with that note at the 5th fret. You don't have to play it, because if you leave it open, it's D. It's in the chord. If you put it down and pull it off, it's fun. It's a fun sound to mess with. But the basic part of it, that 3-finger shape, and the upside is that you get comfortable with that. You just slide it up 2 frets, and there is the A7 chord. So you've got the same thing. It's the A chord, the root of the A, the 3rd of the A, and the flat 7 of the A chord. And you can then do the same thing with your little finger, playing around with that note on the 1st string. So there's A and G and back to the D.
So that note D you're playing around with on the 1st string, that's your pinky. You're just kind of taking on and off.
Yeah. And it's it just gives it a little color, you know. You can leave it down. You can, in the case of the, and it's a G, it's a G chord, so it's a G note, so right in there with the chord. And then the A string, the open 5th string is usually A is not part of a G chord, but in blues it's okay. This makes it a G9 chord. So you don't have to necessarily avoid that note. You can use it and think of it as part of the sound. Like B.B. King, when he plays would play blues, he leaned a lot on 9th chords, and this is like a G9 when you have that A note. And then when you play the A7 chord here in that little shape, now you've got A with an extra A on top there. So it's, and so it makes it it gives some interesting coloring. So, but now let me just show you how to use this. So is that chord progression that I described that you can get, that's on this chart, will show you exactly what I'm playing, because there's different ways to play the 12-bar blues and different combinations of chords, and I'm going to use the one that is the supplement to this workshop. So I'll start right on the D, or actually I'll start with the kind of a little turnaround. So here's the A to end it, and then G, and here's the beginning. So D for 4 measures. Now I'm going to go to the G chord for 2 measures, and then back to D and improvise for 2. Here comes A, the chord, G, the chord again, D, a little improv, and A, and it repeats. So I'm improvising on the scale for 4 measures of D, and I go right to the G chord, back to improvising 2 measures of D, and then here comes A, the chord, and G, the chord, and D. And that's so that the what makes it improvisational is using that blues scale. Anytime we're on the D chord, we're not going to play the D chord. We're going to mess around with that scale, and then and what gives it its kind of harmonic, the glue that holds it all together is when it's time for the G chord and the A chord to come. You hear them. I'm not just continually noodling around on the scale, but rather you get the sense of the strong sense of harmony of that 12-bar form, and versus just noodling by, so that it sounds okay, but it doesn't necessarily sound like the chord changed. And the difference, I think, in improvisation, and the best improvisers, people like Eric Clapton or Charlie Parker, you could take those guys and stop them anywhere in the chord that they're in the song that they're playing and say, what chord are we on? And they'll tell you. And what you find with other kind of shortcuts to improvisation is that you get a scale pattern and you can doodle around on the scale pattern and it'll always sound okay, but it doesn't sound compelling. What sounds compelling to me is when I can hear those chords. Does that make sense, David?
Yeah. Could you show us real quickly what you're doing with your right hand? Because so people could go through playing something similar to what you're doing.
Sure.
Maybe just one pattern, because I think you're very notable.
As I'm playing around with the scale, there's not exactly a pattern, but what's fun is that you can just like get acquainted with where the sounds are, and then you can and what's the one of the rules of improvisation? If it sounds good, do it again. So that sounds okay. I'll do it again, and I'll just hammer on. So there's not a set way of doing it, but you can play those notes individually, like so, or you can hammer them on and pull them off and find what's comfortable. I like to pass things through that filter of here's I can share with you how I do it, and then it needs to pass through the filter of you, like how you do it, what feels natural to you, and then when we go to the chords, one of the things that definitely helps is emphasizing the root of the chord. And the root of the chord is the lowest note. So when it comes time to go to the G, I'll hammer. It's nice to hammer on that note and then brush them something. And then kind of you can mess with the others. But what will make it sound the best is hearing that low note in the chord, and then to the extent that you're comfortable and can once you got those other guys down, it's nice to mess with the first string, and then same thing with the A. Hear that, just a slow motion, and it's the more you can, if I do a brush thumb without having those other fingers down, it sounds a little muddy. So if you can see if you can get at least those three fingers down in that little triangle, and your little finger, it's not mandatory, it's optional for these, and it can come in later. So in context, like the very last the last four measures of the progression, if I were coming into that out of improvising on the scale, here's a little improv on the scale on the D. Now here comes A, and you'll hear the hammer on. Here's hammering on G, and back to D.
Is there a way to if you're playing with friends who are playing other rhythms, is there a way to kind of vary up the rhythm? Like if you're playing your friend was playing a shuffle, blues shuffle or something, to try to get that rhythmic idea going in Clawhammer Banjo.
Yeah. I think I like to be able to listen and be responsive, and part of there's that notion, David, of like the music begins once you know the notes. So if you know where you should go with your right hand, with your left hand rather,
yeah.
Then with your right hand, there's the idea of less can be more. And one of my favorite chords of all time, of course, is this one. You can and so is my so somebody else steps in the room, and they're all of a sudden we're into some rhythm that I haven't ever played before. And how do I manage that? And one of the ways to manage it is to get listen to it and kind of think of yourself as before you're a banjo player, you're a drummer, and because when you're playing the open strings, you're still a drummer. But this is a way where you can find a groove that what's happening here with this band? Or with this particular song? What do they kind of do? And what can I do? And then once I find it. And a simple way of just like find where the downbeat is, see if you can catch be a very a simple drummer first, and then add more to the groove, and then add. And I'm just doing the. And with like the less is more until I can lock onto whatever anybody else is doing.
That's good.
One other there's one other set of chords I just wanted to share that. Sure. The G. So we had these G and A down here. So here is A at the 7th fret, 6th and 7th fret, and G at the 4th and 5th fret. There's this version. If we take that little kind of, I call it a slant chord, right out of G tuning, where I'm going to have my index finger. Now this will be the A. I have my index finger at the 12th fret on the 3rd string, and then 13th fret on the 2nd and 14th fret on the 1st. So I have that sound, and that's an A7 chord there, and if I took it down 2 frets, it's a G7 chord, and so now that improvisation, here's the last 4 measures. Here's A to G, back to D. Here it is again. Here's A to G to D. And what's kind of fun about those is that that we can pull off and play around with the melody notes. You can kind of think of that, that window here, 12, 13, 14, as being you can pull off from 14 to 12 on the 1st string and on the 3rd string. And I usually leave my middle finger where it was to kind of keep my balance there. So when I get to that A, these sounds are all gonna work well, and then they working on, and once you it's like a 2 for 1, because once you do it on the A, you can also do it on the G. So now let me play it through once in context. Here's just at the top. So. Now here's the G up there. Back to D. Here comes A. And G. And so that provides an interesting contrast then, because you've got the lower register for using that voicing, and then you've got the upper register and it's some nice choices, and so just to sort of summarize, when you're on the D chord in that progression, you're improvising on the scale, and when you're on the G and the A chords, you're not improvising on the scale, but rather you're playing around with those chord shapes, hammering on, sliding into some of those notes, pulling them off, whatever you want in the lower register, as demonstrated, or in the upper register.
So that little lick off the upper register A and G chord,
Mm-hmm.
you brought your index finger down to the 1st string, and then you pulled off with your ring finger, so you essentially pulled off to the index finger, essentially.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I leave my middle finger put, as it's kind of the balance point. So there's the chord as and it's I like to think about that idea of visualizing. There's the chord shape, and now I have a little time, so I'm gonna mess around with, so that the notes I can add to it, like almost like if you wanted to think of a scale, is that sound. So from the 12th fret on the 3rd string, the 14th fret on the 3rd string, 13th string, or the 2nd string we'll leave alone, and then we've got 12 and 14 on the 1st string. So any of those will work, and any combination of them, and and you don't have to. And the same idea. If it sounds good, you can do it again. Pull it off, hammer it on, whatever you like, and by leaving your middle finger, it'll help you keep your balance and your whereabouts straight. Makes sense.
Yeah, that's good. And it's a good little lick there. One that you can move all around the fingerboard if you're doing other.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, is there anything else you want to get in here to kind of wrap up right in this? I
think to jump in and have some fun with it, and let me just show you going to the key of E quickly. So here's okay, now that other guy walks in, he starts playing in the key of E, and that's like, oh man, I got to join in. So here's what I'll do. I throw on the capo there. I put this railroad spike underneath the ninth fret, if I can get it in there. Come on. I should have practiced this part. There it is. Usually most railroad spikes take you a little sharp, so you have to quickly fix that. And then, so now let's see. And I'm in the key of E. And you get the idea. So that you can you can hang with your guitar playing friends, and they'll appreciate that. That upper reg, the banjo sounds fantastic up there, and it cuts through all those guitar players. Their notes, they're low. They're in the low register, and so it's going to sound fantastic with them. So
yeah.
And I think it's just to experiment. That's the thing to do, but to bear in mind, and what's friendly about improvisation with the blues is it repeats, so you get to do it over and over again. You get to try it again, and there's different. You can get like some kind of accompaniment tracks if you want to have that. But this is also, it works perfectly fine for playing by yourself, and that. To bear in mind that there are the criteria and the one of the most important things to me in making the improvisation compelling is attending to that chord progression. Not just don't just doodle around, but rather follow it. And then so I have one chord progression that I shared there. There's different variations on blues. Sometimes people put the 4 chord in the second measure, and there's lots of choices, and the choices, it's player's choice.
That's part of the fun of the blues is you can be manipulated in thousands of different ways.
It's friendly that way.
Yeah.
And there's I heard a guy last night in downtown Chicago, and he was from Mali, and he played this tune. There were a lot of one chord blues tunes. Just it hangs on the just the D all the way through, and it goes. And I've heard other people do that as well with tunes like John Henry and others, where you just like, instead of making a chord change, you just hang on the one chord, and when the chord change that might generally be played should happen, there's tension, but then the tension gets resolved because the one chord comes around anyway, whether you went to the others or not. So
the one chord exercise is, it's fun to do. It builds that tension, but it also gives you a chance to really lock in on the groove, lock in on saying something, and really feel it, because you've taken all this harmonic, you know,
Yeah.
not a distraction, but other things to worry about, and so you really have to focus and simplify in a certain way to
Right.
make it sound good.
One other just quick thing is I'm going to go back to D here for a moment, and just to show that where those I showed the diagram has the blues scale in the first position and in the 12th position, but I often play it here in the middle of the neck. It just gets stretched out a little bit. So where I was playing it earlier, starting at the 7th fret on the 3rd string. So it's 7 and then 10, and then on the 2nd string 7, 8, 9, and then to the 1st string 10 and 12. So and once you have those notes in your ear, you can start to play around with them, and also you don't have to confine yourself to the scale pattern itself, but rather they connect. This, like, here's a note at the D note on the 7th fret of the 3rd string where we started, but you can, if you go down to the 5th fret on the 3rd string, that's the C note, that's the flat 3rd. So just that sound is fun to sort of experiment with, where, well, once you have this notion of where those scale notes are, then play around with the notes around them. And everything doesn't have to be in the scale. There's other sound you can play with, the consonance and dissonance and things that, if you like the sound of it, then it gets to stay. And if you don't like the sound of it, then you throw it out, and that's because you make the rules with the banjo, not somebody else. So
Yeah. All right. Well, this is great, Michael. Everybody watching, please put questions and comments in the comments section, and also let us know what you'd like to see in the future as well. We'd like to hear from all of you. So, but we have more of these coming in the future, and keep a lookout for them. All right.
All right. Well, thanks. Yeah. See you soon.